Hello, happy March, everybody, and welcome to PDN Live. Tonight's topic is attending or hosting a training class. It'll be myself, the moderator, Shannon. We'll have Rob Pincus, the Executive Director at Personal Defense Network, chiming in on your questions on attending or hosting any training classes. You found us here, but find us online at personaldefensenetwork.com. While you're there, sign up for our newsletter. It's free. It's awesome. Share your stories and interact with us. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So you, like I said, you found us here, so you can find us online. And Rob, where did you go? So we have Rob with us, but I know that he was shuffling around looking for props before this. But
just to make the lighting better. Since we're talking about attending or hosting classes, I thought, well, you know what? Let me come here to what is always my Eastern headquarters, my home range, Ancient City Shooting Range, where I just kicked off the training tour. And I thought, well, let me just be in a range, because we're talking about coming to a range, take a class, or inviting me to a range, or any of our PDN tour instructors, or any instructor at all. I was just on the phone with another guy with another training group, and he was talking about some instructor development issues and curricular development and collaboration issues. And there's a bunch of really great guys out there wanting to teach students stuff. And if you have a range, or you have a group of people that want to go to a range, or to, an open piece of land with a big hill behind it and learn firearms, or a place with, a grassy open area to do unarmed combatives, like Cecil Birch rolling around on the ground or something. Caleb Causey can come to your cafeteria, your meeting room in your office. Like, a lot of people ask us these questions. How do we get that training? And other people have questions about, like, well, what if I've never been to a class before? Or what do I need to have? Or is it okay if I'm a first timer? Or what if I've done a whole bunch of classes? What should I know about going to another class with a new instructor? So let's do that. That's what we want. And because we've done a lot of different topics, and I think this is something that is worthy of a PDN Live. I thought we would do it here, and now the lighting's horrible, but you know what?
That's quite all right. So so you mentioned the tour. The tour has started. You're at the Ancient City Shooting Range in Florida. So for those that aren't aware of the tour, can you give us an idea of what the tour is and why it's such a big deal in your world?
I don't know. Is that I don't know if that is that backwards. Does that work? So the tour goes across, like, starts here, and then it goes up this whole area here, and then it kind of goes back this way and zigzags around, and then it goes out there, then here, and then up to the top, all over the country. So 2012 was when we officially started the Personal Defense Network training tour. And that's what I do. I drive around, zigzag around the country, start here in Florida, go all the way up to New Hampshire, Vermont sometimes, and then cut back down through the Midwest and zigzag around a bit. Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and then into about 4th of July. Traditionally, I take a 4th of July weekend break, one side back at the Western headquarters in Denver, one side or the other of that, teach in Colorado, and then Nevada is on the schedule this year. Or Nevada, I always get in trouble for doing that wrong. California, Washington, Oregon, and sometimes Idaho, sometimes Utah. And meanwhile, while I'm doing all that, we've also got another dozen or so instructors teaching at their own location. So I'll do about 50 or 60 classes this year on the tour, but we'll have about 120 classes on the tour, because some of those other people I mentioned, Cecil Birch, Caleb Causey, we have Mike Seeklander, we have William April, Derek Poole, Barrett Kendrick, Omari Broussard, who else is out there? Ken Ortega, Maggie Mordaunt, the CCW Maggie. There's a whole group of people, Alessandro Padavane, teaching their specialties, whether it's medical or knife or concealed carry. Maybe they're teaching, the intuitive defensive shooting program type courses, or they're teaching, even Seeklander snuck a couple of competition courses in on me. He's even doing a team-up course with my World's Glide buddy Rob Latham on the tour this year. So there's a lot going on all over the country. It's 120 classes. There'll be about 50 to 60 venues. I'll be at about 30 of them. And this actually started in 2008. So the history of the tour as a concept was, I did a t-shirt for all of the people who had attended classes during 2008, where we did classes all over the world, did a combat focus shooting tour t-shirt, like a rock concert kind of tour, like a rock tour. So it listed all the cities that we played in, that we did training in all over Europe and the US. And that sort of kicked off the idea was maybe I should stop zigzagging all the hell over the place and treat it like a tour, like the tour manager, the promoter wouldn't necessarily, if you got a bunch of semi trucks and buses, you wouldn't train, you wouldn't put on a concert in Nevada one night and New Jersey the next, and then Ohio, and then Texas, and then New Hampshire. You'd organize it better. So got a little bit more organized in the early years after the Valhalla Training Center shut down, and started doing it as an actual loop, or at least one pass, and then shoot back to wherever I was based, which at the time was Virginia Beach. Then we ran the tour out of Ohio, and then now we're running a tour out of Florida for the last several years, because this, as my home range, is just the best place to sort of get everything together. And we did a big week worth of video last week. We had a bunch of instructors out there. Ken Scott from Provectus Group, he's another one of our new tour instructors this year. He's out of Atlanta, but he came down and did some video with us. Also some video for SWAT Magazine. Of course, the PDN tour has sponsors. SWAT Magazine, now that we're doing a lot of the digital production with them online as a sort of a sister site to PDN for the armed professionals and people interested in some of that more tactical side of the training gear. Been associated with SWAT for a long time. They're also going to be teamed up with us on the tour this year. But if you look through this, look on that sticker and on our t-shirts and on our challenge coins, you'll see all the sponsors on the side of the new tour truck. All of our sponsors. So we've got Springfield Armory is back, Crossbreed Holsters is back, USCCA is back. Of course, we've done a lot of collaboration with them through my company, IC Training, launching a new book coming out at their expo next month and launching a training program with them. Who else? Viridian Weapon Technologies is back again. Next Level Training, Cert Pistols are back. Mike Hughes, those guys actually host the last course of the tour for me every year, about 300 yards from the Canadian border up in northern Washington. Angel Fire Ammunition is back. Hollow Sun is with us new this year, which is cool because I've been using their stuff. A lot of people saw me using their stuff on last year's tour. They're an official sponsor. Same with Mission First Tactical. And they have joined us along with Patriot Ordnance Factory. So POF Firearms is with us with amazing ARs. Their 308 Revolution has just been like amazing to get to know. And their Renegade Plus, their gas operated ARs. Derek Poole, Echo 5 Training, one of our contributors, was out here the other day. Just really impressed. We actually had some students. I was running a class. He was shooting the gun on video for the slow motion cameras, and they're like, "Oh, somebody's shooting full auto!" Like that's how fast he and that gun were. It was pretty cool. Cryptek is back with us. I think they're the only ones I haven't mentioned. Cryptek. Last year, I had the Cryptek truck wrap on my 4Runner, and on the new truck, we actually had a completely custom version of Cryptek Raid developed by one of their collaborators up there in. Up there at their headquarters. They came up with a really cool metallic kind of play on Raid for the new vehicle, which is neat. And then 511 Clothing is a tour sponsor. So we're going to see a lot of 511 Clothing has evolved a lot over the last couple of years. They kind of maybe in some ways gone back to their outdoors kind of, still rugged, but very comfortable and very, just kind of at home in the coffee shop, as well as on the range, as well as out, hiking in the mountains. Royal Robbins kind of style stuff coming back, not just big tactical cargo pockets and all that. So 511 is the first time we've had a clothing sponsor on the tour. So we've got the sponsors, we got the stickers, we got the instructors, we got the classes. You can learn all about it at pdntrainingtour.com, and you'll see there's a lot of different venues. And again, kind of getting back to tonight's topic, how do you become a host for a PDN tour stop, right? And that's one of the reasons we're talking about this. Every year we launch the tour schedule, and somebody looks at it and they say, well, why aren't you coming to Nebraska? No one asked, like no one invited, or maybe somebody keeps posting every time I put up a training calendar, like, but you're still not coming to Nebraska. Well, I don't know, where do you expect me to go? Well, there's a range right down the road. Good. Go down the road and tell them everything you hear tonight about hosting.
So anything else going on before we move on?
You wanted a tour overview, you got a tour overview.
No, yes, and you know what? You brought up a great point on all the instructors that are part of the tour. Most of them have been guests on this show in the past. So if you are thinking about joining one of those classes, you can definitely prepare ahead of time by watching one of the PDN lives that we've done with them. Practically everyone you've listed has been a guest on this show. So we'll get into that as well, because it's totally relevant to tonight's topic of preparing for attending a class. But anyways, feel free to ask relevant questions for those of you that are watching live. The more relevant they are to the topic, the more likely we are to get around to them. And I was thinking about splitting this up into two different sections. One for those who say, hey, why aren't you stopping in Nebraska? And how do we get something set up for the tour? And also the second half being those who are actually going to a class. What do you need to do to prepare for that? We've got live questions on both of those topics. But I wanted to jump into the hosting a class because that's been what we've been getting a lot so far for questions. So like you said, Rob, a lot of times people ask, you're not coming to this state. How do we get you to come here? I've got property and a private range at my house. What do you typically say to those people that have the land or have a range that's ready to go? Where do you start from that? You have the idea, but then I feel like there's a lot of logistics behind that in terms of organizing, getting students to the class, insurance. Like where does one start when they go, I have a spot, now what?
Well, I think now this is definitely where a lot of this comes down to. You probably need to reach out to the specific instructor that you want to host, right? Because let me just caveat everything I'm going to say about how I want it to go is that's how I want it to go. And there may be 50 other traveling instructors that feel the same way. It seems like there's an awful lot of traveling instructors lately. There may be 50 that feel the same way and like 7 that completely disagree. And then like 30 that are okay with it, but that's not their preference, right? Mm-hmm. So you really do have to ask the instructors. Some instructors are going to be really rigid. They're going to say, look, hey, it's got to be, the range has to be 42 feet at least, but no more than 47 feet wide. And it's got to have a shady area. And there's got to be, like snacks, it's like, again, it's kind of like a concert tour, right? Like certain musicians are going to it's got to be this. And if you really like their music, then you'll pull all the green M&Ms out or whatever they want. I'm not that way. I teach people and I take advantage of or adapt to the environment, right? Like I said, like I've taught on ranges. I mean, I'll be on 50 ranges this year, I'm sure, if not more, when you not just classes, but then when I'm attending a class or when I'm visiting a range or observing or scouting a range out I might want to teach at, I was invited to come check it out. I'm doing some work with the NSSF. If anybody looks at my Facebook posts from this morning, I shared the first in a series of articles that I'm writing, and we're going to do some webinars and really helping NSSF member ranges understand how to make training a more important part of their business and a more valuable part of their business, not just for them, but for their clients. So this idea of how to integrate training, well, I have to be able to answer those questions at an indoor range and an outdoor range and a pistol only range and at a range that has a covered area and you have to shoot and stall, or a range that has the baffles or whatever, or wide open free for all range. So if I can tell them how to run training there, I should be able to run training there myself. So for me, I've literally taught in farm fields, like with a hill behind them. I have taught in underground bunkers that were set up during the Cold War to protect the infrastructure from nuclear fallout in Central Europe. Like I've taught in modern indoor ranges that are beautiful, like cigar clubs, and then I've taught in really horrible ones where I feel like I have emphysema just for being in there for 10 minutes. So I'll adapt pretty much to whatever if the other pieces fit, right? And the number one piece is you really have to want to host the class. You really have to want to host that instructor. If you just want to make money, there's probably easier ways to do it than bringing in an outside instructor. Now, long term, certainly, like I was talking about, if you're a range that hosts a lot of different instructors, that becomes part of your business model, and building a relationship with different instructors, offering those instructors as resources to your members, to your clients, to your region, brings in business, sells bullets, sells membership, sells hats, sells the equipment that instructor explains to students why they need it. All that stuff does happen for your range, but the use of training as a resource has to be legitimate to the education of your clients, has to be legitimate to the education of the students. If you don't really care about people getting educated, you're going to want to cut corners. You're going to want to, put too many people in the class, or you're going to want to do things that just kind of get in the way. And going back to instructors, I think some instructors, quite honestly, end up in this kind of trap where they certainly start out, I'm sure at least start out with the best of intentions or continue to have the best of intentions. But when they start doing the math, if they don't have 20 people standing on the line for the number of classes they do a year, maybe they only do 12 or 15 classes a year. Well, if they want to run a business that's worth running, they have to have 15 or 20 guys standing on the line. You know, I run 60 classes a year, so I can have some that have 3. You know, I have some advanced classes, specialty classes, classes in the middle of nowhere where I'm driving by on the tour anyway. And then other classes are going to have 15, 17, 20 people, right? And then I've also not the only way I generate revenue. So there's book sale, there's this and there's that. So my flexibility is much larger than a lot of other guys. Some other guys are kind of stuck in a model of, I need to have a minimum of 20 guys and I can only run the class with these parameters. So you have to ask the instructor first, what do you need? So that's probably when you get started, you may think you have the perfect range. You may say, I've got this great facility. Well, you have to let the instructor define whether or not that facility is great for him. So that's the first step. Find out what the instructor needs, or I would be really specific about what your facility has. And if you're really serious about bringing them in, if I get an email that says, you know, click this link, check out my facility, depends on the day, right? Some days I'm too busy. Today I taught a whole class. I'm organizing stuff to leave town to start the driving part of the tour officially starts tomorrow. I've got the live broadcast tonight. Like, I'm not clicking any links to check out your facility. On the other hand, if you say, hey, I've got this open training bay that's 50 yards deep and 120 yards wide, and it's got a covered area and the classroom is nearby, we'd love to host you, and we're in central Missouri, I can make a decision really fast to reply, copy in my office and say, hey, that sounds great. We don't have a facility in central Missouri, and it sounds like you have a great place to train, and the office will follow up and try to work out the details.
So do you have any minimums? Like, for example, Scott asks, what are typical range requirements, length and width for pistol and rifle classes? I know it's different for every instructor, but I guess what are the site minimums you typically look for?
I would be surprised if there's a defensive pistol instructor out there that says he needs a range deeper than 25 yards for a pistol class. I don't know why. I don't know what he's doing in a 1 or 2 day defensive pistol class that he needs to have a range. I'm sure that like in our advanced pistol handling class, which is day 3 for us, 3 and 4, we'll shoot at 100 yards if the range is available. But if the range isn't available to let people experience what it's like to try to hit a man-sized target at 100 yards, we'll do it at 50. Right. And the class doesn't really suffer to not have that piece. It just will have more time to spend around a vehicle or working on malfunctions or something else. But again, I'm a pretty flexible instructor. I know other guys are teaching off the clipboard, and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're not shooting at 100 yards on the advanced pistol class. They're like, world's going to fall apart. So you do have to, again, go back to asking the instructor. But at the same time, I'd be shocked, again, like 25 yards for a pistol bay. One of the things I think is more important is how much space you have for each student. So I've been told we have 20 shooting stations. Well, I don't go by shooting stations anymore. I ask, what I would like to see is each student has, double arms reach. If I can have 6 feet or 7 feet per student, that's kind of my minimum. If you're telling me that there's room for 12 people, but those 12 people are standing shoulder to shoulder, it might be fine for a target shooting class, but if they're going to be moving and reloading and drawing and all that kind of stuff, like, it doesn't work. So I need a minimum of, let's say, 4 or 5 feet for sure. I'd rather have 6 or 7, and if the range will accommodate 10 feet per student, great. I can yell, I can figure that out. Like, we may not use it all day long, but we'll spread them out. A lot of instructors are picky about minimums and maximums. I'm way more interested in the maximum during the tour, where I don't like to go over 12. Some classes in some facilities, especially if I have some of our other instructors with me, I can go up to 15. Some conferences, just to get as many people through as possible, we might get up to 20. And just, it kind of changes what we cover in those short conference blocks. But I don't like to run multiple relays, right? So I don't like to have, well, if you can run 12, does that mean we can run 2 relays and do 24? But that's not the same. because you really got a lot of downtime, and people say, well, they could be reloading while this other relay is shooting. Well, then I don't get any like breather. Right now I'm constantly doing the same thing, and our class isn't just reading off the clipboard and blowing a whistle. So we're teaching. So I'm not going to give a lecture block for the first relay while these guys are reloading and then give the lecture again. Now I could have everybody do the lecture, and then one group shoots and then the other group shoots, which I certainly have had to do on ranges where we've had relays, but it's not the same experience for the students. And if I send this group off to go reload while this group is shooting and something interesting happens, then this group misses out. And then 2 hours later, if I want to build off of whatever this group saw, then this group's at a loss and I just have to teach it over again. So I think maximums are way more interesting to me than minimum. Now, outside of the tour months, when I'm not driving that circuit anyway, minimums do play a role, right? If I'm down here in Florida, like, in December, just kind of whatever, doing admin work, hanging out, and somebody were to have booked a course in Nebraska, that wouldn't happen in December. Somebody booked a course in Arizona, I wouldn't have said yes to Nebraska in December. So I'm going to go to Arizona, and we find out 2 weeks out there's like 3 people signed up for the course. It's kind of hard to justify getting on the plane, flying out to Arizona. And it's not that if those 3 people were here and I would just like getting up in the morning and I'd drive over and I'd do it and I'd drive home at the end of the day and I'd have lunch in the middle. Cool, let's do it. 3 people. But spending 3 days for a 1-day class and the time, the money, it doesn't work. So people see me teaching really small classes during the tour, and I'll get even guys in the industry. They're like, how are you not canceling a class that only has 3 or 4 people? Like, well, 3 or 4 people, when you think about it, like I'm already paying for the gas. I'm already paying for the hotel. I'm already going to eat food that day. I've committed to 4 months on the road. It's lost money if I don't do the class, plus 3 people that don't get training, plus 3 people that don't become advocates for the experience that they had and for other people to train. The venue gets disappointed because the venue's like, oh, we had to cancel that class. So they might become less interested in trying to host the next one. And it's part of what I see as the responsibility of the training community to invest. I'm not saying you have to spend $3,000 to run a course, but certainly at my position, I guess, or my tenure in the industry, if I'm not investing in developing training communities and showing people that, yeah, the fact that you want to train is important to us as a community, the fact that you as a range want to host training is important to us, shame on me, right? Because I wouldn't be doing this if some other ranges hadn't rolled the dice and hosted me when only 3 people were going to show up to like any class. Like there was like we don't even know what that is. We can't even Google that and find out who this guy is. Now I should be able to show up to that class in Nebraska, in July, not December, but I'll go up there in July when I'm driving through anyway and show up for 3 or 4 people. And I think you'll find there are a lot of instructors like that who, as long as it's not, completely killing the bank, they'll invest in a good relationship with a venue or with a host.
So let's talk about, you talked about earlier people where they cut corners. Where are people cutting corners in terms of planning these classes, and where shouldn't they really cut these corners?
I think probably the biggest thing I see is like that idea, like just cramming people into a class makes the class somehow better or better on the bottom line. And I think long term it doesn't work. So if you have a small range, like the Gander Mountain Academies, right? We can talk about like some of their small ranges they had, but they're a really good example. When Gander Mountain Academy kind of started up as an idea, it was cool. It was like, all right, well, you had a big retail presence. You are all over the country. You want to put ranges and a trained cadre in those spaces and develop training curriculum. Cool. Yeah, I'm in. Yes, let's do it. Let's develop a training curriculum. And we did. We just kind of took the CFS EFC program and dynamic focus shooting and put it into the Gander Mountain Academies. Well, the one in Minneapolis, the one just south of Minneapolis, the one down here near Orlando, they were full-size ranges. They were good to go. There was one in I think it was like La Crosse or Onalaska, Wisconsin, that was like smaller than this little this little range space room that I'm in now. It was like tiny, and it was like it was really hard to do any practical training there for more than like, 5 or 6 people at a time. And it was, so what happens? They come back and they say, well, we that's not profitable for us because we could put up another rack of, I don't know, North Face clothing and make more money with that floor space with no staff whatsoever, just like, the checkout counter person, and we could make more money. And it's like, yeah, you could. I don't know how to argue. I can't argue with that. Like, yes, you could. But if you want to be serious about running a range, then you're going to have, this is how you do it. If you want to run a training range, then this is how you do it. It's a lower volume, lower profit margin kind of thing. And you have to have the integrity to do it right, to have it be profitable in your other areas, because that's what then drives the customer loyalty. That's what drives the equipment sales. That's what drives people coming back after the class to practice at your range and buy the ammo, pay the membership fees. Like it's almost more of a instead of a bottom line thing, it's almost more of an investment. I mean, it's still a net positive unless something's really goofy about the business relationship. You make some money, but the long-term effect is much more, I think, the relationship you build with your community of shooters and your clientele and your members of a range that has membership that then will create other opportunities to generate revenue. You have to be sincere about the training. So when you start cutting corners and making the training experience not as good, or you do the thing where we're not going to host any instructors. We're going to use local guys. Like this guy's been a cop for 10 years, so he's going to teach our courses. Well, if he's teaching a course on how to be a cop, that's probably a good start. But if he's not really an educator, if he's not really someone teaching, if he hasn't gone through instructor certifications, particularly if he doesn't teach a program that's relevant to your clientele, you're going to have people have, maybe an okay experience, maybe a great experience, but definitely not what I would consider the best experience, because you're not making the investment as the range owner or the business owner, the range manager, to bring in the person that's best for the student, kind of like whether they know it or not. Give them the best that you can give them.
So let's talk a little bit about making that training experience great. We had a question come in about any guidance on running a successful women's only class, or any guidance on running a very niche class.
I'm going to breathe through that first part of the question a little bit. Women's only classes are nothing but marketing. All right. So I said it out loud. I'm going to get in trouble. And let me explain that now that I'm in trouble. Like, for anybody that just tuned out, like later when you hear somebody complaining, tell them this next part. There's a human being's hand on a gun. If you're talking, and again, I'm talking about defensive shooting. Obviously, there's plenty of women's only classes that would make sense being for women because they have unique situations. Unarmed defense is very different for the average woman from the average guy because of the lack of upper body strength relative to the average guy, and the types of ways that women have to defend themselves physically in close quarters. The types of attacks and the nature of those attacks is very different from the nature of most attacks against men. It doesn't mean that there isn't some overlap. It's just that makes more sense to me. I teach defensive shooting primarily. If you're talking about defensive shooting, there's no difference in the human hand on the gun, whether it's a male hand or a female hand. And the gun doesn't know the difference. Even if you paint it pink, it's still just the same gun. So there is no reason that class needs to be different in terms of the way it's taught, in terms of the skills that are taught. Well, what about purse carry? Okay, well, you can teach purse carry. You can teach off-body carry in a bag, right? I was just showing somebody earlier a briefcase I've got that has the Velcro-y area. We can put a crossbreed Ojai module in there, and it's a soft side briefcase. I've got the new 511 backpack that they just sent me a bunch of cool stuff to take out on the tour. It has a little concealed carry area with a soft, hook and loop area, and I can put the holster in there and open it up. It's the same as purse carry. You still need that special technique. So is that more common for women to carry in a purse than it is for a guy to carry in a pack? Yes. Does that mean it's only something that's taught to women? No. Is it more common if you put a lot of women in your class? Yes. But it doesn't need to be a women's only class, right? In fact, maybe it's a really good idea not to put the woman in the class full of women who are going to say, oh, yeah, carrying a purse makes sense. And all they see is a bunch of kind of, yeah, that makes sense, like sort of reinforcing that idea, versus a woman comes to a mixed class. 80% of the class is carrying on their belt. and she sees how much faster and more secure it is and all the things that are positive about it. And she says, oh, well, maybe I can be doing that. And I get it. There's plenty of female instructors out there and plenty of men who teach women and advocate against purse carry for all the benefits that carrying on your body has. But it's just one of those cliches I see over and over again, you know. Now, from a marketing standpoint, why is it valuable? It's valuable for all the psychological, sociological, behavioral reasons, right? The women who say, well, I don't know if I want to train with a bunch of guys. I think those days are over. It's sort of, unfortunately, there's some instructors out there who play on it and sort of keep it alive because it helps their business model, quite frankly, to say, yeah, I teach women's only classes and you should train with women. If you're a woman, it'll be more comfortable, it'll be better. We had a woman today with first time training. First time training with us. She had taken another class a couple weeks ago from somebody else. Her husband and they both went. They saw this class was listed. The husband, who's had some other shooting experience and skill development, they both took this other instructor's class for the first time a couple weeks ago, and he left it. She did not do well. She didn't enjoy it, and he said, you know what? You go take Rob's class, train with his guys up there. I'm going to stay home and watch the kids today. You know, you go do that thing. She's a teacher, and he knows I do a lot with schools and events and all that, and I have plenty of women instructors and classes. And she had a great time, but you could tell she showed up kind of afraid it was going to be like the class she took, 2 weeks ago, where I guess she actually said to me out loud, there were only 2 women in the class, but the instructor was able to, kind of get us up to speed pretty quick. So we were able to cover a lot of ground. It was like it was so condescending and like misogynistic, even the way she was retelling the story. And I was like, I really thought we were past that. Like I thought the days of the industry where a woman felt uncomfortable in a gun class, I thought we were past, but obviously it's not completely there. So we can do the second part of the question. The first part of the question is that sociological, behavioral, psychological marketing piece of come on out and just have a bunch of women train. If that works at your venue, if it works for you as an instructor to develop your business, cool. But don't go so far as to suggest that it's really a different set of skills for defensive shooting, for medical training. Like it's not a different set of skills for medical training. It's like I would be offended if somebody said, well, we're going to teach them how to patch up the kids because, well, I want to know how to patch up my daughter. I want to know how to patch up kids too. I'm a guy. There's really very, very, very few categories of classes where it really makes sense to say, well, we have a special class just for women other than the social marketing aspects.
Gotcha. Okay. So we have a couple more live questions in. Ed asks, he runs a CCW class free of charge for members of his church. Should he be charging?
I don't know. Right. Like, so, and here's why I don't know, because that's Ed. Ed, that's kind of up to you. Ed, here's what I would say. If you have a lot of people who say, yeah, I'm going to be there on Saturday, and then they don't show up and you feel like they don't find value in it because you're giving it away for free, then yes, that behavior will change if they have to put up some money. If you're obviously if you're neglecting, I'm a life coach, Ed. Like Ed, if you're not getting your bills paid and you're giving up time from work, and yes, it's fair to charge people for the valuable skills you're imparting, whether they're associated with your church or not. I'll tell you, one of the things I do is I've done a lot of. In fact, I just saw some hosts recently say, "Hey, we need to hang out with Rob again. We haven't done a class in a few years." They had hosted a course and they wanted a women's self-defense, unarmed defense course for the moms and daughters and like that they wanted to run through their church. This is years ago when they hosted, last time they hosted a class. And I think I'm telling this story correctly. I'm going to feel bad if not. There was something we were going to donate the money to, and I don't think it was the church. I think it was an outside group where I didn't want to take the money for this church thing, like this community group. I was getting my money out of the firearms class, so we did something at the church. But I do feel like we charged some money, but it went towards some other cause. Last year, I did a class in Austin, Texas, with Sure Shots women's group. They wanted to do an unarmed female self-defense class, women's assault prevention, and they took care of all the arrangements for the venue, and they did all the marketing and the hosting, and it was right for Christmas. So we did a Toys for Tots. You know, they brought in any women that were doing it. They had to bring in toys to donate. So you figure, okay, either the church group, if you don't need the money, you don't want the money, but you're finding that people aren't taking it that seriously. Well, maybe, you know, if there's a women's support group in the church, or if it's the children's ministry, or maybe there's a security ministry. If your church has a security team, you know, collect the money, you know, $50 a head, $20 a head, and give it to the church security fund, or buy the church a security camera, or do something like that with it, to where if you feel guilty, like because of the church relationship thing, there's plenty of ways to get people to acknowledge the value, to invest in the process, and for you not to feel selfish, right? You can still do something else with the money. So that's what I've done in the past, and I know a lot of other instructors do similar things.
Those are great suggestions, kind of thinking outside the box there. We have another live question from Greg in Portland, Oregon. If we have space to offer, I'm assuming a class, who do we contact? I'm sure we're going to get a lot of these at the end of this of like, okay, I have a range, Rob. How do we get you here? Training@icetraining.us. That's our email. You could send me a Facebook message, you know, you put it in the comments. But that's not just for me, right? I think everybody. So let's say any of the tour instructors, if there's a specific tour instructor that you want to host, you can still reach out to us. You know, if you can't find I don't know I haven't looked at Caleb's website in a long time. So Caleb Causey at Lone Star Medics, maybe he doesn't have, you know, you don't even know. You just, hey, you have a medical guy with the tour. We want to host him. I'll forward it, right? And you know, then the thing would be, well, maybe Caleb's busy that week or whatever. Maybe he already has a host in that area that he has a long relationship with. So, okay, well, come back to me, right? Well, who else do you know? We've worked with several guys who do medical stuff. So if you can't, for whatever reason, reach directly out to that main instructor, or you're not getting a response, I would also say this: don't necessarily write an instructor off because he doesn't respond via Facebook message or something. I had a request in my Instagram. I don't use Instagram Messenger, but every week or two I might flip through and just see I have 7 requests or 17 requests for messages, and I'll just kind of scroll through them. But the notifications don't come up on my phone. I just don't see it. So it might take me a while to answer through that particular medium. LinkedIn, I don't do much on that, but I'm there. So if you have an instructor that maybe you're really active on Twitter, you know they have a Twitter account, you send them a message, but you don't get an answer, try them on Facebook, try their website, you know, try one of their collaborators. Hey, do you know, I'm trying to get him to host, because I get that. I'll get guys who are like, hey, I've been trying to reach you. Well, they had one letter wrong in my email, or, you know, my spam filter didn't like their email server or whatever. So social media is really good for me. It's really good for some of the instructors. It should be pretty obvious, you know, if they're posting pictures of their kids, and they're also posting pictures of their classes, and if they're also posting advertising, if they're heavily engaged in that version of social media, chances are they're being very responsive. If they're not, or if it looks like a third party is just putting out marketing pictures of them, then you're probably not going to get a response. So there's no hard and fast rule. I know there's some instructors that love getting a phone call. You know, they've got their number on the website. If I see a number come up on my phone that I don't recognize, I'm going to hit a button that says your number isn't programmed. Send me a text or an email, or, you know, let me know what we need to talk about. I very rarely am going to answer an unknown call on my phone. So it is very much specific to the individual, but it starts with reaching out and just saying, yeah, I'm interested in hosting. And again, here's the venue I have, and or here's the course I want to host, right? Because I teach a lot of different things. You know, maybe you just found out I do women's assault prevention courses. You know, I've been doing them since 2000, I don't know, something, early 2000s. So if you just heard that, you're like, oh, well, I saw some video you did at PDN talking about that. I didn't know you did courses in person. We'd love to host you. Great. But if you just say, I want to host a class, I'm going to assume you mean a gun class, because that's most of what I do. So be specific about that part too. So can you say the email address one more time for you?
Training@icetraining.us.
Awesome. Thank you. So we talked a lot about hosting training classes. We're getting into past the second half of the show. Let's talk about attending a training class. I guess where does one start? The internet's a great place to find instructors, but what should people look for in a class? There's no shortage of companies or instructors.
Right.
So how do you find the right one?
The first thing is there's a difference between paying, like, I don't know, $100 or less a day for a class from some local guy and paying hundreds of dollars a class for, you know, a traveling kind of national level instructor, or an instructor from a national level school, even, or flying to attend one of the fixed site schools that are still around. If you're looking at doing the first part, it may just simply be the course description. It may just be the topic, right? Like, I want to understand, you know, armed home defense, and there's some guy I've never heard of, or there isn't even a name attached to it. It's just armed home defense class at Ancient City Shooting Range, Saturday, you know, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., $75. If that course appeals to you and you got $75 and you can get to the range, the local range, go take the class, right? Like, it's probably not going to be horrible. And even if it's not what you didn't love it, it was $75 and you got 6 hours worth of something out of it, right? Like, I would advise you, if you see a class description, it makes sense at a venue, you know, local to you, and it's less than $100 for a day of training, take it if you can, right? If you're going to pay $200 or more a day for training with somebody, you better be able to find a published article. You better be able to find a YouTube channel with content, not just ranting or whatever, like actual like training content. You better, you know, Personal Defense Network. If someone has been published by Personal Defense Network, that means that I've vetted their ability to communicate information, or their information, the validity of it, the value that they bring. It may be something completely different from what I teach, or it may be a specialty area that I don't have, but I can't think of, in retrospect, I can say that there's people who, you know, we've been doing this for a long time. We started doing the DVD series in 2005. So over the last 13, 14 years, there certainly have been people who I, you know, thought, hey, this person really knows their stuff in this area. And then a couple years, 3 years later, maybe that information gets stale, or somebody else comes along that blows my mind, like, whoa, I never thought of it that way. This is way better. Or there's just two guys that, like, they're both really good at teaching stuff, and I have them both on there, even though they contradict themselves a little bit, right? Or they contradict each other a little bit, you know. And I'll keep going back to Seeklander, because he does a lot of gun stuff. He teaches, I think, a great defensive pistol course. I think I teach a great defensive pistol course. They're not exactly the same. There's a lot of overlap, but there are things we do differently. If somebody says, who else should I take a pistol class from, and you don't want to take it from me, obviously I put him on Personal Defense Network. I think he's a good choice. Maybe you watch the TV shows. You know, if somebody's on the Trigger Time show, or somebody's on Best Defense, or somebody's on one of the Gresham shows. If you're watching the show and somebody has a segment and it really resonates with you, and it's like, oh, that's good, that's great, cool. Maybe they're worth spending a couple $100s a day with. But if there's just some guy who's like, $250 defensive pistol course on Saturday, and all you see is like a resume, you know, whatever, like, you know, cop for this long, Marine Corps, you know, USPSA guru, whatever. But there's a lot of those guys out there. Like, I don't know what like whatever that resume is, there's other guys out there that probably have the same resume. So what you should do is probably look for the content. Right? Go read the article they wrote, go read their blog, go watch their video, and see if their content resonates with you. See if their presentation style resonates with you. See if they seem like they're articulate and able to actually explain why they're doing what they're doing. If all you see on their YouTube channel is demonstrations of them shooting, well, if you want to go watch an exhibition shooter, you know, pay the $200 a day. But if you want somebody to teach you, then that's what you should be looking for. So other than your friends saying, hey, I took this class, I know you, I know the class, you're going to take it, probably the next best thing you can do would be to actually learn something from that instructor through another medium before you spend hundreds of dollars a day. I think that's the best way to vet an instructor. A guy who's just getting started teaching at the local range, he may not have that. The guy who's traveling from another state and charging hundreds of dollars needs that post more than his resume. He should be giving you some idea of what you're getting into on that class, or she.
So you've done your research, you've vetted the instructor that you want, you've signed up for the class. Usually you get an itinerary of what the day is going to be like, a gear list. Let's talk about the gear list, because I've seen this in other classes before where it says bring 500 rounds of ammunition, which that can mean like, and that's usually just what it says.
Right.
What's your advice for gearing up and preparing for the class once you've signed up for it?
I guess it depends on the class. If the class is like, intro to concealed carry, and the course description says this course is meant for someone who's just gotten their concealed carry permit or considering getting their concealed carry permit and doesn't have much experience. And then the supply list is bring what you need for a day at the range, including your concealed carry gun, 500 rounds of ammunition, and a quality holster. That probably doesn't help much, right? Because you just described this client that doesn't know what a quality holster is potentially, right? So, that kind of course, you better have a truck full of holsters that you can hand out to those people that show up with crappy holsters, right? If the holster is important to the class. So on the other hand, if it's the advanced pistol handling course that has a prerequisite of a bunch of other stuff, well, yeah, show up with your gun, your holster, eye protection, ear protection. And if I have to tell someone that they're training with me in Arizona in August, if I have to tell them to bring sunscreen, I probably don't want them to have a loaded gun in my presence. If you can't figure, so you can go both ways. Sometimes the gear list is the packing list for summer camp when I was 11, 3 pairs of underwear and 2 pairs of, it's like, again, I don't need to tell somebody to be prepared for any kind of weather. Like if you got up and left that day knowing you were going to an outdoor range and it was raining and you showed up without a raincoat, I don't know if I want you to have a loaded gun, right? Like now if you show up and you're like, I might have to train when it's wet, so I don't care. I know a guy who got his gun caught in a raincoat at a class once and shot himself in the leg. I won't wear a raincoat on the range. Let me help you through that. Let me help you through your fear of raincoats on the range. Like there's different ways an instructor can handle that, but what I try not to do is kind of over baby the situation. Now, I don't care. Like if an instructor wants to tell you, bring 300, if you're bringing a 900, you're bringing a 9mm pistol, bring 300 rounds of 115 grain round nose ball ammunition. Okay. I don't know why. I don't know why you're telling them that specifically, what kind of ammunition they have to have, right? I have had people show up with a gun. I've had them show up with 9mm handgun to an entry-level defensive shooting class with 9mm Kurtz ammunition, which is .380 to Americans. That doesn't work in their gun. That's happened, but I don't know how you work around that. Like the guy who's going to show up with the .380 ammunition for his 9mm handgun probably wasn't going to be all over it just because you said explicitly, make sure the caliber on your barrel matches the caliber on your bullets. Because I think a lot of guys are going to read that and say, I don't even know if I want to take this course if you have to say that. So gear lists can be tricky. I definitely am on the minimalist side of gear lists. I probably added more things to the gear list just because of customer questions that the office has to deal with or that I have to deal with in social media, where they say, hey, I didn't see the gear list didn't say anything about layered clothing. Should I bring layered clothing in case the weather changes on the range? Again, I don't know if I want you in my class.
Don't be an idiot.
But a lot of people in the industry they've come to expect that. They've gone to classes where you get the summer camp packing list. So they were like, oh, I didn't get a packing list. Really? You sure? Show me the email. And they call it up on their phone and it's like 500 rounds, holster, eye protection, ear protection, pistol, whatever. And they're like, oh, well, I thought there'd be more. Well, he has he has a cleaning kit. Okay, well, he brought a cleaning kit. I don't tell you, if your gun gets dirty and it stops working, maybe I'll let you borrow the cleaning kit. But you shouldn't need a cleaning kit for a one-day class. That should not be on the list. If your gun needs a cleaning kit for a one-day class, you brought the wrong gun. And again, I've got a truck vault that I'll open up in the back of the tour truck and say, here's a Springfield XD and a holster and some magazines, and go have fun. So I'm not that worried about it. Other instructors will be really worried about it. I think that it does come down to, you need to make yourself comfortable, right? If the packing list says, my thing, bring a gun, and you're like, oh, I don't know. I know a lot of guys say bring 2 guns in case the first gun breaks. All right, bring 2 guns. Like, I'm not going to be mad at you because you have an extra gun. Now, if you show up to the class and you're like, I brought 7 guns, and I was thinking maybe I could do the first hour with this gun and the second hour with this gun, the third hour, like, no. How about no? Pick the gun you actually carry. Well, I carry them all. Okay, well, stop and pick one kind of gun to carry and sell the other 6 and buy 7 of the same exact gun. That way you aren't confusing yourself, you know, because if you're the gun hobbyist, you don't come to my class. If you just want to come to shoot all your guns and try them out, that's not what we do. I'm sure there's other guys that do that, but quite frankly, you're probably better off doing that with the RSO at the local range, just getting him to coach you through grip on 4 different types of guns so you figure out which one you're actually going to carry, and then you come to my class.
So we have just a little bit of time left for this topic. We got in an interesting question about becoming an instructor. They ask, what is a typical path, apprenticeship or certification?
Depends on the group, right? Like, so I originally, it was just apprenticeship, right? It was apprenticeship, and really, I would say, like, in the early days, like out at the Valhalla Training Center, it was like 100,000-foot view apprenticeship. Like, here's what we're going to do. You know, I kind of, it's in the military, we call it the commander's intent, right? Like, here's what I want to accomplish. And then the commander, like, goes and, you know, hangs out and has lunch with other officers, and like the NCOs have to like figure it out. So like, okay, we know what the commander's intent is, but we need to execute on that. And I think the early days of Valhalla were a lot like that, where it was like, okay, here's what I want to do with this opportunity we have to train people and make people better. And this drill is an example, and this concept is, and then, you know, the guys that worked with me there, right, like Jeremiah and John, and we just would collaborate and figure it out. And sure, I was the leader guy, but it was a collaborative and a bit of apprenticeship in terms of coming out of the public sector and coming into the private sector. Brad mentored me as much as I mentored him in terms of my curriculum, but he had worked at Whittington Center and worked a lot of places. When I was first like blessing people and saying, okay, you can go teach that course now, it was really apprenticeship and osmosis. Nowadays, we very much have a structured certification process, but there is a little bit of a combination. I was just having dinner with a student who's been training all 5 days here in St. Augustine, very interested in becoming an instructor. He actually said, you know, I thought I wanted to become an instructor, followed your material, I've trained with some of the guys you've certified, but I wanted to kind of experience an intense block of instruction with you, even on some things I've already done, to watch how you teach other people. And he was saying tonight, like, I'm committed, I'm in. You told me, like, I want to teach this way. I see how you do it. It makes sense. Even some of the things I didn't get before, now I've seen it. I've seen it play out. I've seen the rain. I've seen it on a hot day. I've seen it. Got it. Let's do it. What do I do next? You know, and should I take the 3-day instructor course, or should I take the USCCA instructor version, or should I take the 5-day? So our programs, we generally like to see people be students first, not show up blind. Because we just finished a 3-day instructor development course that Mandy Autry was running with Mike McElmeal at Cedar Valley Outfitters, the little fishing game range they have in the classroom out in Iowa. So they were in eastern Iowa, and they finished up the course Sunday. I actually felt a little bit bad because it was snowing and we were having beautiful weather on that day, but I got paid back by rain today. So they did a 3-day instructor course, and from what I understand, like, most of the instructor candidates there knew exactly what they were getting into, but there was one guy who was there who apparently didn't like read the deal. Like, now, if you don't know what you're getting into with an ICE training company program, like, we're one of the most prolific publishers of content in probably of any of the schools out there. You're like Gunsight, just because it's been around longer than I have, and so many people do it for media events. Other than Jeff Cooper and Gunsight, I don't know who possibly could have published more information than like the ICE family, all of our independent instructors, all the stuff we do with PDN, all the TV shows I've done, the books. So yeah, it's not a hard Google search to figure. So maybe this guy's protesting because of the YouTube gun thing and he's not using Google. I don't know. but he paid his money and he showed up. He didn't know that like we keep no look reloads, for example. So he's like really frustrated. So he spends 3 days frustrated because he's paid and he's invested and he said he wanted to do it, but he's mad because we don't teach people to look at the gun when they're reloading. And that's like a big thing for him. Well, I kind of feel like sad for him that he didn't know that. Apparently I can talk about this because apparently he kind of saw the light at the end, but he was really frustrated on day 2. By day 3, he clicked, he figured out why, and he understood, like, you know, looking at your gun during a reload is like looking at your brake pedal when a deer jumps out in the road. You don't need to do it. It doesn't help. So he got over it. So if you're saying, if somebody's asking the question like, well, I want to get certified to teach, and you just like throw a dart at the board and figure out, and oh, there's an instructor course, I'm going to jump into it. Make sure you know what you're getting into. And that's the biggest difference between a certification and an apprenticeship. Is the apprenticeship you know all the way along, right? You know what you're getting into, and you're kind of walking through it. And a certification, you just show up, and if you don't do the right research, you could be presented with a curriculum that you just don't get, don't agree with, you don't think it's viable, and maybe you'll get educated through that process about why it's important. But I don't know anybody, myself especially, that's doing instructor development that wants someone to show up not already invested in earning that certificate, not already invested in going through that process. So I tell people point blank, like, my job is not to get you certified. Your job may include getting yourself certified. I want you to understand the program better. If you're still asking me questions on day 2 about whether this program is good or not, you shouldn't be at the instructor course. So that's where the combination approach, that's why I say we like people to have gone through our classes, or at least, read all the books, watched all the videos, really studied it before they even put their foot in the instructor course. Don't show up because you did some other shooting kind of program forever and you're like, well, now I want to get that certification. You're probably not going to have a good time. Like, if you're not invested in this program, which comes from apprenticeship. So the idea of going ahead and taking a course, talking to the instructors, talking not just to like the head guys or the senior instructors that do the instructor development, but go call some of the guys that are teaching it, right? Reach out to the woman that's in the town next to you that is actually teaching the program and ask her what her experience has been, or ask the guy across the state, get on the internet. And then, you go to the if you go to combatfocusshooting.com, all of our active instructors are listed. You're interested in becoming an instructor, like, click them just randomly. Like, and what was the experience like? What would you have done differently? What would you have studied before you went through the process? And then we do a lot of team teaching and mentoring after someone gets certified. So again, they went through the class, they get the certificate, but we don't even put them active until they actually team teach with some people, which is sort of like an apprenticeship in our highest level programs. And then once you're a CFS or IDS instructor, in order to become a rifle instructor or a home defense instructor or a 2-person armed defense instructor, or advanced pistol handling, all of those are much more apprenticeship and mentoring, because the nuances of the running those drills, you elevate the risk level, you have a much more diverse opportunity for failure on the range when you start getting more unorthodox. So those, I believe that the best way to do those is sort of on the job training. And it's hard to do that as a standalone instructor course. So as you get more in depth into the specialties of training, it probably makes more sense to be watched and mentored through with a senior instructor, not just sit in a classroom and be told how to do it and then cut loose. So it really, I think all 3 of those approaches are valid, but we have found the best success with letting people be students and truly just show up as students, and then taking the instructor development course, and then team teaching with a senior instructor as certified instructors would be the best.
Okay. So that wraps it up for the March PDN Live. So we talked about attending classes, hosting training classes, becoming an instructor for these training classes. Thank you for all those that asked questions for the live portion. For those of you that are listening post-show and want to ask questions, go ahead and type them in this recording. Rob will check on it throughout the entire week. And you found us here, so you can find us online at personaldefensenetwork.com. While you're there, we have a free newsletter. Sign up for it. Rob, you're hitting the road tomorrow for the PDN tour. Where are you off to next?
Yep, Alabama. I'll be just outside of, I think it's just outside of Dothan. It's been years. I did a class with the Dothan SWAT team years and years ago. So I'm looking forward to getting back in Alabama and teaching Wednesday and Thursday. Then Friday I have off. And apparently it's Easter weekend, told me today. So I knew there was a reason that the baby Pincus and Mrs. Pincus IV, they're flying in tomorrow. So they're going to be with me in Alabama. And then after Alabama, Friday's off. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, I'll be in Atlanta or Covington, Georgia. Great group of guys that host classes up there. So Jason and Jeff, and then another Jeff will be there as well as regular students and some good friends there. I graduated from high school in North Georgia, so I'm sure we'll have some buddies around. And then Virginia. I don't know. And then the USCCA Expo comes up really quick after that. So I'll be in Louisville, Kentucky speaking on Friday and Saturday of the USCCA Expo. And finally releasing my new book on intuitive defensive shooting that weekend. And that part of our collaboration for instructor development with USCCA. So really excited about that. And I'm sure we'll be doing a lot of social media. PDNtrainingtour.com to learn about all the courses coming up over the next 3 or 4 months. And all the other instructors as well. Can't thank them enough for being involved. Of course, the students and our sponsors, you can learn about them. We did taped a new video last week. I think there's one playing now that's sort of like a PDN tour teaser. And then the overview will come out next week. So check out the video at personaldefensenetwork.com. And remember, if you can't join us on a tour class, you can't actually be with us in person in the classrooms or in the gyms or out on the range. You can go to PDN Academy and take an online course, not just from me, but several of our PDN instructors, PDN tour instructors are also contributors at PDN Academy for our online distance education.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rob. It was great having you here. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And we will see you next month in April for another PDN Live.